It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend, a getaway from the stress of work and the chaos of life. I packed my gear, loaded up the truck, and headed to a remote lake in northern Minnesota, far away from the noise of civilization. Before I left, though, I stopped by a bait shop on the edge of town to stock up on supplies. The place was old with faded signs and dusty shelves, but the owner seemed friendly enough, a grizzled man in his 60s who looked like he'd spent most of his life outdoors. "You're headed up to Coldwater Lake?" he asked, handing me a bundle of waxworms. "Yeah," I replied, trying to match his casual tone. He paused for a moment, his weathered face tightening. "Be careful out there. It's not just the cold you've got to watch for." I laughed nervously, thinking he was referring to thin ice or maybe bears. "What do you mean?" He leaned in closer, lowering his voice like he didn't want anyone else to hear. "Strange things happen up there. People hear sounds, see things. Folks around here don't like to talk about it, but you do well to keep your eyes open and your fire burning." I chuckled awkwardly, brushing it off as local superstition. "Thanks for the tip," I said, paying for my supplies and heading out the door. But as I walked back to my truck, I couldn't shake the look in his eyes, something between fear and pity. It stayed with me during the drive, and when I finally arrived at the lake, I found myself glancing over my shoulder more than once. Like I said before, it was supposed to be a relaxing weekend. The locals warned me about the weather. They said the cold could seep into your bones and never leave. But I wasn't worried. I'd ice fished a dozen times before and thought I knew the dangers. Hun boy was I wrong. The lake was a vast, frozen sheet of white, surrounded by dense pine trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky. I set up my tent in the middle of the lake, drilled a hole in the ice, and settled in for what I hoped would be a peaceful day of fishing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the temperature plummeted. The stillness of the lake became unnerving. No wind, no sounds, just silence. It was as if the world had been put on mute. That's when I heard it, a faint, distant scream. It wasn't the howl of a wolf or the cry of an owl. It was human, but not quite. A wail that carried pain, hunger, and something primal. I froze, my breath fogging the air as I strained to listen. The sound came again, closer this time, echoing across the icy expanse. I told myself it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew better. The ice beneath me groaned and cracked, a sound every ice fisherman fears. But this wasn't the natural settling of the ice. It felt purposeful, as if something massive was moving beneath me. Panic set in. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the lake. That's when I saw it. At the edge of the trees, a figure stood, tall and impossibly thin. Its eyes glowed like embers in the darkness, piercing through the shadows and locking onto me. Antlers jutted from its head, twisted and jagged, and its skeletal face was stretched into a horrific grin. It stepped onto the ice with unnatural grace, its long, clawed hands dragging against the surface. The scream came again, but this time it was in my head, a deafening roar that filled my mind with images of starvation, death, and despair. I scrambled to pack my gear, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip my bag. The creature moved closer, its body convulsing as if it were struggling to contain itself. Its teeth, jagged and yellow, gnashed together in anticipation. Then it stopped. It tilted its head as if studying me and let out a guttural hiss that sent chills down my spine. Without thinking, I grabbed the propane heater and hurled it toward the beast. The flames erupted on impact, and the Wendigo shrieked, a sound so inhuman and agonizing that I thought my eardrums would burst. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I ran, leaving everything behind, my boots pounding against the ice until I reached the truck. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The lake was empty, but I swear I could still hear the faint echo of that scream, following me through the night. I haven't gone ice fishing since, and when people ask why, I just tell them the truth. There's something out there in the cold, something that doesn't belong in this world.